Number 10, Penn State at number 5, Michigan.
Okay, this is going to be, I think, a really good game. Both of these teams, by the way, have set themselves up for success at this point. Both of these teams have answered some of the questions that we had for them in the offseason, and I think that that's been important for them. If you just kind of walk through some of those questions that they've answered, you start with, let's start with the road team, Penn State. Coming into the season, you knew that they had to get better running the football. They've done that. You got to give a lot of credit to their offensive line, yes, and they're certainly more nasty, but they've been more committed to it as well, from a style standpoint and from a schematic standpoint. And then you obviously can't leave out those two freshman running backs, Katron Allen, Nick Singleton. They have made a world of difference for Penn State running the football. And what that has allowed them to do is take the pressure off of Sean Clifford. And Sean Clifford is a vastly different player there. And I would say he's even more valuable now for what he does and what he brings to the table than what he was in previous years. Here's what the run game has allowed them to do. Put more tight ends on the field, rely on that run game, and allow Sean Clifford and his experience to put them in the correct play. So Sean Clifford is working much harder this year pre-snap than he is post-snap. And in years past, it was a post-snap offense. What do I mean by that? Well, Sean's putting them in the right play based on pre-snap alignment of the defense. And last year, everything about that offense, and really in years prior, it was an RPO-based offense. So they would get into a set, and then they would try to put a defender in conflict, but that decision would be made post-snap. And so you had a lot of those RPOs. And quite frankly, I just think Sean Clifford is way better pre-snap than he is post-snap. He's really smart, orchestrates the entire thing. He changes protections. He changes plays. He gets them into advantageous looks. So it's his brain power and experience that has led them to their run game success, because they do not run the ball a lot into what I would call adverse fronts, okay, where you can't block everybody and it's just very difficult to run into those looks. So this whole style and shift, to me, is what has made them so much better and so much different than a year ago. So what's different about Penn State this year than last year? They were 5-0 last year. They're 5-0 this year. Well, last year they had no depth at quarterback. The offense was still, I would even say, kind of sputtering. They were relying completely on a defense that was very good, by the way. And this year it just feels different. It feels more sustainable. This Penn State team is better as a whole than last year. Now, I don't think that their defensive personnel is quite as good as what they were a year ago, right? They had some really great players last year on all three levels, and that's nothing to take away from what they've got this year, and they still play an aggressive, matchup-oriented style of defense, but they're a more complementary team this year, and I think anybody that watches them would agree. Their ability to run has made the whole difference. Their health on the defensive line, in particular with P.J. Mustipher, and at the quarterback position with Sean Clifford, has made a huge difference. Now, in their matchup this week against Michigan, I think they're going to be tested to a greater degree than anybody has been able to test them. Both of these teams, are in that same boat. And on the Michigan side, what are the questions they've answered? Well, we didn't know exactly who their quarterback was going to be. Now we know. All right. And so now J.J. McCarthy has got those reins moving forward. Were they going to be able to run the football as effectively as they did a year ago when they had Hassan Haskins and Corum and an offensive line that won the Joe Moore Award? Well, check, because they're one of the best rushing teams in the country. A lot of credit goes to Blake Corum, certainly, but also that offensive line has played really well. They're athletic. They've done a heck of a job, and to this point, at least, they've been dominant up front. Absolutely dominant. Oluwatimi is a guy that transferred in and has really transformed them into a more athletic offensive line, and he's done a heck of a job. He's their center. The main question on the defensive side for Michigan was about the pass rush. Were they going to be able to replace the productivity of Aiden Hutchinson and David Ojabo? And obviously, that was a monumental task. And up to this point, you wouldn't say that they've replaced it, but you would say that there's signs that that pass rush can and at times has been dominant to points in this season. Now, they haven't played a lot of great teams, and I understand that. But in the last couple of weeks, something happened late in games that has me believing that this pass rush is going to have a much better second half of the season than it even had in the first half of the season. Guys like Mike Morris and Yabioki and even Junior Colson from the second level of the linebacker position entering into the rush as a fifth rusher, what they've been able to do is that if your offense gets the run game taken away or you turn into a one-dimensional team, if they can stop the run, if they get you behind the chains, or if they get you down on the scoreboard, that rush shows up big time. And we've seen that late in each of the last 2 weeks. So they've answered that question. So what remains for each of these teams? Okay, so I've just, praised each of these teams for where they're at, and rightly so. But what remains for each of these teams? Well, the biggest question of all, can you do it against great competition? And that's what we get to find out in the Big House on Saturday, which is why I'm so excited for this game. Is J.J. McCarthy really ready for adversity? Maybe a second half deficit. You never know. Is this rebuilt Penn State offense really committed to the run game when push comes to shove? Or will they revert back to the RPO post-snap decision style offense that we saw a year ago under Mike Yurcich? Those are questions I can't wait to answer. Is the run game for Michigan for real against a defense that can really stop the run? P.J. Mustipher in the interior of that defense, Abdul Carter, a young linebacker for Penn State, really good players, really good players. I can't wait to see Blake Corum try to run the football against them. On the other side, can Penn State not just stay committed, but run the ball at guys like Mozzie Smith? Like this is just like dripping with great storylines. It's strength against strength. Both of these teams really wondering how good they actually are. I think both of them are very good. So where is the game won and lost, Joel? Where is it going to happen? Where should I be watching about? Where should I train my eyes during this ball game in terms of where it's going to be won and lost? I think it's won or lost on which team can establish the run. I know that's cliche and can be boring, and I understand that, but it's true because both offenses desperately need their run game. We've seen that with Penn State. We know what Penn State is without a run game, and it wasn't good enough last year. They fell off the face of the map after that 5-0 start, health at the quarterback position, so on and so forth. They can't just get into a throwing game. They've got to maintain their ability to keep their tight ends out there, keep it a pre-snap decision game for Sean Clifford, not a post-snap decision game for Sean Clifford. Conversely, I don't know if J.J. McCarthy is the type of guy that can just go out there and say, hey, we're going to throw it 35 times in order to win. Now, you can throw it 30 or 35 times, but only 10 or 11 of those better be actual drop-back passing in obvious down situations, right? So can they run the football? That's where I'm watching. Early in this game, middle of this game, is the commitment to the run game from each team and the ability to have success. Because the team that establishes that is going to be the one that's balanced on offense, and they will ultimately have more success than the other team. I think it's going to be fantastic. Two guys that not many people will talk about in this game. I've mentioned their name already, but they're the two biggest keys for each team. And they're both defensive players, and they're both defensive tackles. P.J. Mustipher for Penn State, Mozzie Smith for Michigan. Those two guys will allow their defenses to either play two safeties back or one safety back. If they can play two safeties back and still stop the run with those guys in the interior, then that defense is going to have a lot of success. Those are the two guys that you've got to watch early in this game. Now, I'm not going to give a pick in this one. I will say Michigan is favored by 7. They're at home. It's in the Big House. It's a maze out, and this game is going to be unbelievable. I absolutely love this matchup. Can't wait to get there. Hey, thanks for watching. If you enjoy that clip, make sure you click subscribe somewhere down here. From game highlights to exclusive interviews and rankings, we've got everything you need as a college football fan right here, College Football on Fox.